I'm here at dance camp, and I just came back from a Buddhist meditation camp. And I had planned on my Substack and podcast to just focus on my life and healing 5 cancers in 4 years, and my grandparents and my parents and my childhood and all the things leading up to it. A digital memoir. And I keep getting sidetracked because I keep meeting amazing people that I just want to interview. And this is another one of those interviews. And I promise after this, I'm going to get right back talking about myself. But this was a Buddhist scholar who talks about mindfulness from an Eastern perspective. And as you know, I work with Dr. Langer at Harvard University, who specializes in mindfulness from a more Western perspective. So I had to have the interview. And then after this, I'm going to go back. I swear. I don't swear, but you know what I mean. Hello, and welcome to the Cancer Goddess. My name is Vera, and I'm really grateful to be here with Stephen Clarke, PhD, and the author of The Armor of Fearlessness, Developing the Virtuous Mark of Authentic Presence. And he has been our teacher, our guru, whatever you want to call it, this last week here at Karmê Chöling. And Karmê Chöling is a place where I first came in 2012 when I was pregnant with my son for a meditation retreat. And this is before I had kids. And now I'm back with my family because they have a family camp. And you're also a part of the family camp with your children. And we're exposing our children to mindfulness, meditation, but in a way that works for them. But the parents, while the children are occupied, get to come and have these Dharma talks and learn from great teachers like Stephen. And so now I'm going to pick his wonderful brain, and we're going to learn a little bit about his study and what he does, which I'm a huge fan of, especially the mindfulness element. And as you know, I work with Dr. Ellen Langer at Harvard University in a very research-based Western approach to mindfulness. And you tell them what your specialty is.
I'm a Buddhist psychotherapist, and so I integrate mindfulness into what I do.
And you also did your dissertation in attachment theory?
Yeah. Using attachment theory and Buddhist meditation or mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. Teaching people loving kindness practices, but some people would connect right away and be easy. Some people would not connect right away, but eventually develop it. And some people would just struggle continually. And so the question was, why? And so that led me to attachment theory. It led me to theories of self, theories of how people develop and work with their emotions. And so that became the basis of my question.
Love it. All right. So I have a lot of notes. I pretty much am probably the only one who takes notes in this. I don't know why more people don't take notes. Just the way my brain, I need to take notes. Okay, so you started off with talking about the collectivism of Eastern culture versus Western culture. And you gave the grandfather-father example, that what would they think of their actions, right? Of what would their father think of their actions. And we don't think about that in the West, really. And just expand on that a little bit.
We come from a culture in which, individualistic culture, where we tend to live alone, we tend to, we're in small families, but we don't have multi-generational households. We don't sort of think about the collective in our everyday life and world. And whereas the example from this was that I have a friend from India who never makes a decision without thinking of his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather. And a lot of my understanding of how this works comes from John Wellwood, who was a psychologist in California. And he was big into the transpersonal psychology in the beginning of it in the 70s. And he was talking about how we, who in an individualistic culture, we benefit, we have more freedoms, we have other things, but we also develop an object relations kind of problematic way of thinking in the world in which we are separate and our ego is so sensitive and fragile. Whereas in a collectivist culture, your ego is not so individual, it's not so sensitive or fragile, it's part of a collective. And so your ego is a little bit more strong and robust. At the same time, you don't have as many freedoms. And so it's a sort of give and take.
So to study the virtues, and that I want to go into what a virtue is, and if you can just tell us, like, what, for the layperson out there who didn't spend the whole week with you learning about the virtues, but just in simple terms, like, what are the virtues? Because by studying the virtues, we become wise and discerning, right? So what does that mean?
Yeah, so a virtue is very simply just an excellence within ourselves. And so in many ways, the word vir means the best of who we are. It's the
Vir?
The
like Vera?
V-I-R.
That's my name.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So
Vir.
Vir, V-I-R.
Okay.
The root word means the best of who we are, or an excellence. And so it has this quality with which you could say it's the excellent qualities that we have and that we can develop. And so the way that I define it is through, we all experience virtues. We all have discipline or exertion, or these are the Buddhist virtues that I'm talking about. There's generosity, patience, wisdom, lots of other virtues, that we all have these, but they can also be cultivated. Just like mindfulness, we all have mindfulness. We all can, remember to get the chocolate chips when we went to the store to make the cookies. We practiced mindfulness. If we remember to not, to watch our hands as we're using a knife or a saw blade, then we were mindful. So mindfulness isn't something amazing. It's something we do every single day, but we can also cultivate it. So these excellences are something we can cultivate. Mindfulness is also something we can cultivate.
How does practicing the virtues, this awareness, how does that lead to transcending the ego?
Well, the ego, from a Buddhist point of view, different than a psychoanalytic point of view, the ego is simply made up of unwholesome or negative emotions. And so the three main ones, they're called kleshas in Buddhism, is passion, aggression, and ignorance. And they're sort of termed differently in different traditions of Buddhism, but they're all basically within that same sense. Passion is really the sense of craving and grasping, sort of greed. And we could say aggression is sometimes also called aversion or anger. So it's that kind of quality to it. And ignorance is kind of a willful ignorance. It's like, I don't want to pay attention, so I put on blinders. I want to check out. I want to dissociate. I want to do something else. So these three are what we're trying to work with. And so by practicing the virtues, we come up against these kleshas, and then we're learning to work with the kleshas so that the virtues are more present.
So there's a lot of virtues, and generosity is the one we really focused on the most. And generosity is the virtue that produces peace, right? And nothing is lost by sharing. And letting go of the attachment to things, people, and concepts, expectations, and our outcomes allows simplicity, curiosity, and creativity to blossom. So just, that's a beautiful. Did you write that?
Yeah, I was on a retreat in 2017, and it just kind of came to me. So that was.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little more. Letting go of the attachment to things, which is a Buddhist, obviously, the attachment is suffering, right? In Buddhism. So things, people, I just had an experience where I couldn't stop thinking about this one person, and it was just killing my soul in a way, like killing my spirit, because I was so obsessed with trying to, like unweave the circumstance. Like if something's coiled up in a ball with like strings, and I was trying to unweave it, and it was just killing me in my head. So we get trapped in these mind prisons, and that's the attachment, right? Or materialism, or ego, right? I have to be a certain way. I have to study a certain thing and to make these people proud, or what. So how do you get out of that attachment?
Yeah, part of it is even just to acknowledge that we are attached. That's somewhat the first big step. Once we acknowledge that we are, then we have more choice. So the idea being, if we're not aware of it, we can't do anything different. So we have to first have awareness. And then once we have awareness, then we can kind of make different choices. And choices can be all kinds of things and can go in lots of different directions, but it might be, and what's kind of what I say is that we're trying to learn how to coach ourselves, how to actually shift our internal voice to be more gentle, kind, also honest and true with ourselves. And at some point, we're learning to sort of redirect the mind. So Buddhist meditation is fundamentally about not just sort of opening up to a bliss, it also is this quality of being able to direct the mind where we want it to go. And so typically when we are, obsessed, right, that we are along for the ride, that we go wherever the mind goes. And so what we're learning to do is actually take the reins more and direct the mind where we want it to go. And sometimes even that process is just to say, to give it a little bit of space, a bit of pause, or a bit of, I'm just not going to follow this, and I'm going to sequester myself until it passes, or however we work with it. There's lots of different ways to work with it, but it's basically how do we redirect the mind to go in a way that we want, in line with our values, that has the least amount of harm for ourselves or others.
And so within the umbrella of generosity, there's other virtues such as charity, hospitality, sharing, grace, acceptance, forgiveness, letting go, gratitude, and appreciation. So we didn't go into tremendous detail about any of those except hospitality, really. And we did touch upon them, but we didn't go into as much detail as in generosity. But can you expand a little bit on the virtues and with the umbrella of generosity?
Yeah, so in Buddhism, there's different essential lists of virtues. And so we were focusing on generosity. And the way that I work with generosity is to list other words that we could also kind of say expand from generosity, or different ways of looking at generosity. So it's a little bit like if generosity is a crystal and there's lots of different edges to it, all these different words kind of give a different view into generosity.
So I asked, like, why do we want to hold on? But I guess that doesn't really matter. The Buddha, you were saying that it doesn't. Does it really matter, like, to understand why we want to hold on to these things, even though it's not good for our peace of mind? Like, we want to hold on to the obsession sometimes, and replay the actions in our head, because some of those actions were positive, right? But then there's actions that were not so positive for you.
Sure.
But why do we want to have it as like a tape recorder?
Well, sometimes we're addicted to the feeling. We want the pleasant feelings. We want the things that are nice. And so we follow those. And as long as they're in line with our values, that doesn't really harm us too much. If we don't eat ice cream every day, but we desire to have ice cream once a month, and we go and have it, well, that's, our mind doesn't totally lose its mindfulness. It's a nice treat. We get to do it. But when it comes to other things that our mind desires, and that has huge effects on ourselves or on our world or our relationships, that is what really we're trying to work with. So we're trying to sort of, discern. We use wisdom. It's one of the main virtues. Wisdom is what allows us to discern what is it that we want to cultivate and what do we want to abandon.
Let's talk about mindfulness, because I love that subject. Mindfulness is only helpful if we are working with our own mind. What is mindfulness, right? What's the definition? I mean, it could have many definitions depending on the culture that you're looking at. But according to the Buddhist philosophy, it's being present and knowing and being aware. And do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, that's a general way to kind of get to the essence of what mindfulness is from a Buddhist perspective, is to say that it's being present and knowing, or present and aware. And the idea being that if we are present and aware, that we're in the moment, we're in the now. And if we're not in the now, then we're in some other reality, so to speak. So then we are lost in thought. We are, thought is mostly about the past or about the future. We have very little thought that's actually about right here and right now. And so typically when we're in the here and now, we're kind of in the flow of being. We may have little thoughts that come along, that are little minor thoughts that sort of direct our actions or our thoughts or ways of being. But fundamentally, being mindful is being more here or now.
I also love what you said. Mindfulness is the cradle of love. It's making friends with ourselves. It's making friends with ourselves. You talked about our paths and suffering, and our path is to learn from this kind of suffering in the mind. Is that part of that? And this is where karma comes in the cause and effect of suffering. And there's 3 ways you said to act with these emotions that are so difficult for us. One is suppression, right? Which is like addiction, right? That's like a suppressing emotion is like, just, I'm going to get high and I'm just going to forget about these emotions. Number 2 is wizened, being wised up by the emotions. Like, oh my God, this is an uncomfortable feeling and I'm aware of it now. And the third one is self-liberation. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so these come from 3 main ways to work with emotions in Buddhism. Suppression can have lots of different ways to work with it. Obviously, many of us are familiar with suppressing through try not to think about things, addictions, other things, but
shopping, materialism, watching TV, being on social media. It doesn't end.
So, but suppression in the Buddhist sense is comprised of a couple of things. One is renunciation. It's sort of that we renounce doing it. So one way to suppress things is like Thich Nhat Hanh has a phrase that when I'm angry, I vow not to speak. So that's one way to suppress something, that we vow not to engage the action. So this would be more of a positive sense of suppression rather than the other things.
Doesn't have to be negative.
So a Buddhist sense of suppression is actually very helpful because it's more the sense of like, I'm not engaging the action that's going to have karmic consequences. Whereas, the addiction or the shopping, it has karmic consequences. We spend the money we may not have. We do the drug that is going to have other effects.
Right. We gamble and put our family in jeopardy. And
so the second part is then, which you said wizen, but it's also the sense of transformation, that we actually take the negative emotions that we're having as the path. And that means that we start to study those emotions, like what's happening here. So I'm angry. Why am I angry? What's coming up? What's really underneath this anger? Or I'm jealous. What's coming up? Or I'm desirous and lustful. What's really here? Why am I lustful? What's happening? And so if we can really investigate and get to the heart of it, then we can sort of have a different relationship to it.
If you're watching, we just got kicked out of the big shrine room, and now we're in the little shrine room, which is okay. If you're listening, this doesn't really apply or matter to you at all. All right, back to you. The eightfold, self-liberation.
Self-liberation is the last one.
Yeah.
Self-liberation is when our mindfulness is so robust that no matter what arises in our experience, we just stay mindful through it, and we don't are not overtaken by it. And so we simply just allow it to liberate, because everything is impermanent, including all states of mind. And so everything will pass.
Easier said than done, which was what, especially regarding parenting, and we talked about that because we're mostly parents here. I mean, we're all parents. Eightfold Noble Path.
What about it?
I don't
what
know.
is it?
I don't know what it is. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know that much about the Eightfold Noble Path. You just mentioned it.
So the Buddha, when his first teaching was the Four Noble Truths, and the Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the path to liberate, or the truth of liberation, that there's a possibility to end suffering, and the last one is the path of liberation. And so the Eightfold Path is the fourth noble truth, in some ways we could say. And it's comprised of 8 different kind of interlocking aspects: right view, right action, right livelihood, all of these kinds of things. There's 8 of them. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And all of these sort of create the path to end suffering.
You talked about your experience doing a street retreat, and you were given begging bowls. And I thought that was, you hear of retreats where you go off in nature and it's amazing and beautiful, but you did a retreat where you literally were on the street and you had to beg. And that to me was so interesting. Do you just want to say a few words about that?
Sure. So the street retreat was something that Bernie Glassman Roshi was created, and it was an idea within his Zen teachings to challenge our way of doing things and to create a sense of entering a moment differently than we would otherwise. He was also very focused on engaged Buddhism, and so he started Greyston Foundation, which started one of the first models in helping people who are homeless and poor have jobs and work in a bakery that they then sold to high-end restaurants in New York. But the street retreats were a way in which to focus on bearing witness. And bearing witness is an important aspect of mindfulness, that we're being a witness to what's happening. We're not simply just in it, but we're witnessing it. And so the street retreats became a very central part of his engaged Buddhist practice. And so people would go on the streets and they had to raise money to do it, and then they would do it, and we would sleep on the street or in a homeless shelter or eat in a soup kitchen or just find food. And then people would gather and practice throughout the day, and then we'd also do practices of begging for money throughout. And part of it was to bear witness to what it is like to be as if homeless.
And then you would give the money away.
Yep.
Crazy. I mean, not crazy at the same time. Okay. What keeps us separated is knowing. And that resonates with me a lot because, Dr. Langer is all about unlearning what you've learned. Like 1 + 1, does that equal 2? Or is 1 cloud plus 1 cloud equal 1 cloud? Or 1 load of laundry and plus 1 load of laundry equals 1 load of laundry? So to unknow is to know, right?
Yeah, the whole philosophy of Bernie Glassman was to get to this place of unknowing, or we might say not know. And so there's a sort of quality of, Zen practice in some ways is about, all the koans and different things are about exhausting our conceptual mind so that it rests in what's present. Because our concepts are thoughts. As I was talking about earlier, thoughts are almost always about the past or about the future. They're not really about right now. Mm-hmm. And so to exhaust our concepts is to get to a place where we don't know. And there's a kind of open space within that. So that's what we're trying to get to.
And that's the Buddha nature.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful. We crave and grasp over our habits and identity. We want to stay in those boxes because that verifies our existence in a way. Mm-hmm. So to be without those structures is difficult for us because we're left feeling empty in some ways.
Because we never actually obtain the thing. We can't hold on to it. We can't. Eventually, everything passes. So impermanence is the main philosophy in Buddhism, and interdependence and egolessness. So all of these three make up all of what is. And so everything is impermanent, nothing lasts. We can't hold on to the new car we get, eventually gets a scratch. The new iPhone that we've been desiring, eventually they come up with a new one the next year, and then we desire that one. There's just nothing that really lasts. Our kids eventually grow up. Yeah. The clothes eventually wear out. There's just nothing lasts.
Yeah, like that high of falling for somebody.
And then they become a real person.
And then they become a real person, and you fight over the dishwasher.
Exactly.
Yep. And then you talked about a woman who had lost her husband, and she documented what people said to her. And this was really meaningful to me as a cancer survivor who was on her deathbed and would have people give me advice and all sorts of things. And even though they never had cancer, and I still get that. You fear you need to slow down, you do too much. And I had to at one point just completely stop all social media, like just completely disconnected. I had a gatekeeper. And so, talk about that just briefly.
Our speech can either be a gift or it can be kind of not a gift to people. And so what I was talking about was that I have a client who had lost her husband, and she was 24, and she started documenting all the terrible things that people would sort of say to her about this. Like, oh, you'll get over it. Oh, you'll do this. Oh, this is... And so there's a sense that, what our words are to people can either be a gift to them or they cannot. And for most of us, words with major tragedies aren't all that helpful. Usually it's creating space for people, or a simple touch, or a simple kind of gesture. It's not really that we're going to sort of fix people's issues or solve their problems. It's really more the sense of the quality of being with someone.
Someone was talking about like going on a retreat and how this has been such a magical experience, and how do you integrate that into your life. And you said something along the lines of letting the retreat bleed into your life, and allowing these experiences to keep, we don't have to stop having these beautiful experiences. Like I started doing this when, I was 24 and I had just gotten sober, and I needed this kind of escape from reality and to come into myself. And I've been doing that for now decades. And so that was a point, because a person was like really uncomfortable with going back to reality. And so this is the practice of doing this. And be grateful to experience and accept reciprocity. You said toxic people and reactions. Okay. This like, you talked about your friend, the psychiatry of culture after every single war. You want to talk about that? Like after wars, there's more family strife and there's more addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you think about throughout the history of humankind, we've gone through many, many wars. Just in America, from the Revolutionary War to the War of 1812 to American Indian War to everything, Civil War, Vietnam War, all the recent conflicts. every time that we go to war, we lose people, we lose family members, we lose all kinds of things. We also have people who come back who weren't lost, and they develop many addictions, many habits that are just not helpful, whether it's literal addictions like gambling or drug addictions, alcoholism,
PTSD.
or whether it becomes kind of habits that of rage and isolation and other things. But our families are affected by this. And we have generation after generation after generation that are affected by conflict, by war, by everything that happens. And so we all carry this as this multi-generational traumas. And, we can think of not just wars, but terrible things that happen. Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, just the amount of suffering that human race has been through.
And essentially, toxic people are those who haven't, are all caught up on this story of themselves, essentially, and haven't really processed it.
Yeah, well, the idea being that from the Buddha's perspective, everyone is simply just suffering. And so we call them toxic, but everybody is suffering. Everyone is kind of reacting to their own historical traumas, their own things that they grew up in. And so from the Buddha's perspective, just everybody is a suffering human being. And so we're just trying to have compassion for everyone. But obviously, we'd also, in having compassion, we're not just blindly exposing ourselves to everybody. As you said, like a gatekeeper, we sometimes need to have boundaries, and that's another form of compassion.
That's right. So we're going to end it there. And thank you so much for your time. And he just wrote a book called, yes, I already talked about the book, but I'm going to close with the book, The Armor of Fearlessness, Developing the Virtuous Mark of Authentic Presence. And then you have this beautiful Zen picture here.
Yep.
And can I read the back of it?
Sure.
The Armor of, why don't you read it? You wrote it.
The Armor of Fearlessness is a universal Buddhist contemplation on the transcendent virtues, paramitas, that lead to enlightenment. Understanding the paramitas as emotions, aspects of character, and as expressions of our life force, we can study, practice, and embody them fully in our life. This book provides a contemplation practice on the paramitas, commentary on the contemplation, and suggestions for practicing the paramitas in our everyday life. By engaging the transcendent virtues repeatedly, we overcome the small mind of ego and find true peace. The layering of the paramitas, when fully embodied, not only frees us from the cycle of suffering we are caught in, but also unveils the natural state of health, the authentic presence of fearlessness.
Beautiful. And, just to reiterate, Stephen is a Buddhist psychotherapist, PhD, and the founder of the Windhorse Institute for Buddhist Psychotherapy Training and Retreats. He is also the founder of Windhorse Meditation Community and author of The Cradle of Loving Kindness, Transforming the Destructive Emotions in the Path of Bodhi. And I'm going to be getting a 2-for-1 special. I'm super excited about that. So where can they find this? They can find this at www.windhorseinstitute.com and www.windhorsecommunity.org. So thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And we still have another class with you tomorrow.
Yes.
Exciting. On Sunday too?
No.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe
right.
you'll be back next.
Thank you so much for listening to The Cancer Goddess. Please subscribe as you can support our nonprofit, Breast Cancer Goddess. And you also get lots of perks when you subscribe, even if you're a free subscriber. So just subscribe. Nevertheless, you're going to get lots of beautiful information that will help you heal your mind, body, and soul.